Welcome back for another deep dive. This time we're looking at some excerpts from Frankenstein, Part 2, with, of course, some expert commentary to guide us. Have you ever felt like your passions were, dismissed? You know, like Victor's dad kind of reacts to his whole Cornelius Agrippa thing.
Yeah.
Well, today we're going to dig into that a bit, and also we'll look at some of those subtle hints about Elizabeth's role, and maybe even find some parallels to our own journeys, of discovery.
You know what's so fascinating about this part of the book? We're not just seeing how the monster was created, but we're also getting, Victor Frankenstein's origin story. It adds a whole other layer to understanding his choices, don't you think?
Totally. Right away, Victor starts reflecting on his parents, like their whole meeting, his upbringing. It's like he's looking for answers about himself through them. The commentary even suggests that this upbringing is what shaped what they call divine gift, his very life.
Exactly. And that's where it gets really interesting, this idea of human life as a divine gift, but also influenced by how you're raised. Like a sculptor with some play, It makes you wonder, what were all those forces, those influences that shaped us?
It's a really good point. It makes you think about your own path, right? What were those big moments, those people who nudged you toward who you are now?
It's a question worth thinking about for sure.
So going back to Frankenstein, we meet Elizabeth, this young girl who joins Victor's family. But the way he talks about her arrival, he uses the word inmate. Inmate. What's up with that?
I know, that word just jumps out at you, doesn't it? Right away, it makes you question Victor's point of view. Can we really trust him as the narrator? The commentary even suggests that Elizabeth might be like Mary Shelley's own stand-in in the story, reflecting how limited women's roles were back then.
That's an interesting idea. She snuck in a little critique of society right into this gothic horror story.
Exactly. It's even more interesting when you remember that Mary Shelley herself faced a lot of societal pushback as a female writer during the Romantic era. I mean, her own mother was Mary Wollstonecraft, a real pioneer for women's rights, who sadly died not long after Mary was born.
Oh, wow, I didn't realize that. So, in a way, Mary Shelley and Elizabeth, her character, they were both dealing with a world that didn't always want to hear what they had to say.
Right.
It makes that inmate comment even more powerful, don't you think? It's like Shelley is pushing back against those limitations, those expectations.
It definitely adds another layer to the story. It makes us think more critically about the characters and how they fit into the bigger picture of society back then.
Okay, so we've got this kind of complex family dynamic and these subtle social critiques going on, but then we come to Victor's fascination with Cornelius Agrippa, and his father's reaction is, well, not exactly thrilled.
It's that classic clash, right? The young scientist, excited to learn, but then the older, more traditional figure tries to hold him back. Victor finds these writings by Agrippa, this alchemist who was, even way back then, considered a bit of a mad scientist. Young Victor is just totally captivated, but his father, well, let's just say he doesn't exactly share that enthusiasm.
It's almost hard to read. Victor's dad calls Agrippa's work sad trash. Not exactly the best way to encourage a young mind that's eager to learn.
And yet, Victor keeps going. He doesn't let his dad's negativity squash his curiosity. He dives right into those so-called ancient scientific theories, totally driven by his own, thirst for knowledge. It's actually pretty inspiring in a way.
I see that there's something to be said for that kind of passion, that refusal to let negativity get you down. I know I've had times where, people were skeptical or discouraged about my own interests. Makes you wonder how things could have been different if the people around us had been more supportive,
Total. The impact of a mentor or even a parent can be huge. Their words, their attitude can either nurture your passions or just completely stifle them.
And speaking of stifling, we can't forget about Professor Krempe, who Victor meets at university. This guy is like the embodiment of academic snobbery. He dismisses Victor's interest in what he considers outdated science.
Krempe is interesting, though. On the one hand, he represents this pressure in academia to be on the cutting edge, to discover something totally new. But his way of doing it is so harsh, so dismissive. Makes you think, what kind of scientist could Victor have become if Krempe had been more encouraging? Like if he'd been willing to guide Victor's interests instead of just shutting them down completely?
That's a really good question. It reminds me of something you mentioned earlier about having a mentor who was pretty cynical about your research.
Oh yeah, I definitely remember that. I was so excited about my research topic. But he kept telling me it was a dead end, a waste of time. It was so discouraging.
But you didn't give up, did you? You kept going despite that.
Well, I was stubborn, I guess. But I also felt like deep down my research was important, that it could actually make a difference. And luckily I found other mentors who saw that potential and encouraged me to keep at it.
So even when you face discouragement, finding the right mentors can change everything. And thankfully, that's what happens for Victor when he meets M. Waldman.
And Waldman, he's like the total opposite of Krempe. He sees Victor's spark, that genuine interest in chemistry, and instead of putting it out, he encourages it.
It's a turning point in the story, right? We've seen Victor's passion dismissed by his father, ridiculed by Krempe, and now finally he finds someone who recognizes his potential and says, go for it.
Exactly, and it highlights something really important. Mentorship isn't just about teaching someone facts. It's about encouraging their curiosity, helping them develop their talents, and guiding them to reach their full potential.
It makes you think about the mentors you've had in your own life, doesn't it? Those people who saw something in you, who believed in you, even when you maybe doubted yourself. Those are the people who really make a difference. It's like those mentors become a part of our own story, shaping our divine gift. But Waldman, he doesn't just blindly encourage Victor. The commentary points out that he's got this balance, optimistic about Victor's ability, but also realistic about the challenges of science. He doesn't sugarcoat things.
That's so important. A good mentor needs that balance. To inspire someone but not set them up for a huge disappointment, it's tricky.
Yeah, it really is. It makes you wonder, how do we even find mentors like that in our own lives? People who can guide us, but without, crushing our dreams or making them too big.
That's the question, isn't it? And honestly, there's no easy answer. Sometimes it's about, finding people whose work you really admire, whose approach just clicks with you. Other times it's about realizing that the people around us, colleagues, friends, even family, they could be great mentors too.
I like that it doesn't always have to be some formal program or anything. Sometimes it's about recognizing the good advice and guidance that's already there, right? But there's also something to be said for being a good mentee too. It's not just about sitting there and soaking up wisdom.
Oh, for sure. Being a good mentee is just as important as finding the right mentor. It means being open to feedback, even when it's tough. It's about putting in the work, showing that you're really committed to learning and growing. And I think the most important thing is communication. Being able to tell your mentor about your goals, your struggles, what you're aiming for.
Yeah, it's a two-way street, like a partnership built on respect and understanding. It makes me think about Victor again. He's finally got this supportive mentor, Waldman, but his story still ends tragically. So does that mean even the best mentor can't stop someone from making, terrible choices?
That's a tough one, and I don't think there's a simple answer. Mentorship is great, but it's not a guarantee. It's a guide, support. But in the end, people have to make their own choices, find their own way.
So even with Waldman there, Victor could still have gone down that dark path, created the monster, and, unleashed all that chaos.
It's definitely possible. Remember, Victor is driven by this huge ambition, this almost obsessive need to, defeat death, to figure out the secrets of life. And that kind of ambition, as exciting as it can also be super dangerous, even destructive. Even the best mentor in the world can't always know what choices their mentee will make.
That's a pretty sobering thought. It's like, even with the best guidance, we've still got that ability to choose good or evil. And it's those choices, those decisions we make along the way that really shape our lives, don't they?
Exactly. And that's what makes Frankenstein so powerful and timeless. It's like a warning. It reminds us that knowledge and power, even when we have good intentions, can have unintended and really bad consequences.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about. It makes you consider your own choices, your own ambitions. Are we using what we know, our talents, our divine gifts, for good? Are the people around us the kind who challenge us but also support us in healthy ways?
Those are great questions to ask ourselves, maybe even a call to action. We all have the potential to be mentors and mentees, to learn from each other, to help each other grow.
As we keep looking at this part of Frankenstein, I can't help but wonder, could things have been different for Victor if he'd had different mentors? What if his dad had encouraged his scientific curiosity instead of dismissing it? What if Krempe had actually guided him instead of making fun of him?
It's tempting to think about all the what-ifs, isn't it? But we can't change the past. What we can do is learn from it, from Victor's successes and his mistakes.
Right, we can't rewrite Victor's story, but we can look at our own stories, our own journeys. Who are the Waldmans in our lives? The people who support our curiosity, who encourage us to think for ourselves and be creative.
And just as importantly, are we being that kind of mentor for other people? Are we sharing what we know, our experiences, in a way that helps and inspires those around us?
It's a good reminder that mentorship goes both ways. It's about giving and taking, learning and growing together.
And as we go on, both in this deep dive and in our lives, I think it's important to keep that sense of exploring together, that commitment to always learning and growing.
Absolutely. With that in mind, let's jump back into Frankenstein and see what other insights we can find. As we wrap up this deep dive into Frankenstein, you know what keeps coming to mind? This whole idea of responsibility.
Yeah,
Victor's story is like a big warning about what happens when ambition goes unchecked. That knowledge and power, they can be misused.
it's definitely something that hits home, especially now when it seems like every day there are new scientific discoveries and technologies just exploding. Makes you wonder, are we as a society really thinking about the ethics of it all? You know?
That's a good point. And it's not just for scientists or researchers, it's for all of us. We're all using technology and information in ways that, like, no one could have imagined a while ago. So, how do we make sure we're using these things responsibly, ethically?
Well, I think it starts with being aware, knowing that every choice, every action we take, it has an impact. You know, it's about understanding that knowledge isn't good or bad on its own. It's how we use it that makes the difference.
Like that saying, with great power comes great responsibility. And in a way, we all have some power now. Power from being able to access information, technology, connecting with people across the world instantly.
Exactly. And with that power comes the responsibility to think critically, to question things, to really think about the consequences of what we do.
So where does that leave us? What can we actually do to make sure we're using our knowledge and power for good?
I think education is huge. We need to encourage critical thinking, ethical awareness, right from when kids are young. We need to have open conversations about the good and the bad that can come from scientific advances, from new technologies.
And it's not just about school, right? It's about those everyday talks, those moments when we challenge our own ideas, when we listen to people who see things differently, when we try to understand just how complex the world is.
Absolutely. It's about having intellectual humility, admitting that we don't know everything, that there's always something new to learn.
So as we finish up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. Think about Victor Frankenstein, his ambition, his need to uncover the secrets of life. Now think about what you're pursuing, your own passions. Are you approaching them responsibly? Are you thinking about the consequences, the good and the bad?
And just as important are the people around you, the kind who will challenge you, who will encourage you to think for yourself, who will help you figure out the ethics of what you're doing.
Because in the end, it's not just about what we know, it's about how we use it. It's about the choices we make, the impact we have on the world around us. And I think that's the biggest lesson we can take away from Frankenstein.
Well said. So until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep trying to use what you know for good.
And never forget that responsibility that comes with seeking knowledge. It's a journey we're all on together, and the choices we make along the way, they'll shape not just our own lives, but the future of the world. Thanks for joining us. PAA.